What's up guys, today's deck profile is going to be on Blazer. Blazer is a very interesting ruler. He's gotten a lot of hype and it's kind of well earned. He, for control players mainly, is a really good way to think about playing kind of like a very control aspect where you can fully control the game by having the perfect stone lineup all the time, making your opening game really strong while still being able to play really strong late game cards because your deck has just been so consistent all the way through. Up until Blazer's existence, it was really hard to play a lot of decks that needed red all the way through that also maybe needed a lot of black, or Knights, for example, were really hard to play light red while always having turn 2 Gwen, but now always also having turn 2 Lancelot. The version I decided to go with is kind of close to the Resar deck I had built. Because that deck sided into Blazer, I kind of took certain things I liked about that deck and mixed it with certain ideas that I can use red for just in general to kind of make something that is a little combo oriented, but I try to make it as consistent as possible because I really don't normally like combo decks. So let me just hop straight into the video and show you guys what I got. So Blazer himself has a very simple effect. It's to pay 0 and you can only play this ability if your opponent controls a J ruler, and that's his J activate. And it says magic stones you control gain tap to produce fire. That doesn't mean you have to tap him or anything. It simply just means that every magic stone you have can also now produce fire, as well as whatever color it's producing. If it's a dual stone, like let's say light green, it would now be light green red. So it's just very simple. It just makes it so you can use fire without the fire. And then on his J ruler side, this side's the very interesting side. It says, when this card enters your field, target J ruler your opponent controls loses abilities until the end phase. And then when this card enters your field, destroy target J ruler your opponent controls. So essentially, the only workaround about this card is if your opponent has Imperishable on their Resonator and you summon this, it'll blank the Imperishable and then kill it. So it for sure kills any ruler. Of course, if they have a Regalia like Excalibur or Leviathan that can either banish, or like Horn of the Sacred Beast that can tap to give Imperishable, those are workarounds around this card because the Imperishable can happen after the blanking effect, so then you end with Imperishable and die and therefore don't lose it. But of course, Deathscythe says your opponent loses swiftness and can't gain Imperishable or have Imperishable, so this with Scythe is a 100% destruction for any J ruler. And then of course it also says magic stones you control gain produce fire, because it would be really weird if it didn't. And then his last effect is this card gains 4/4 as long as you don't control another Resonator. So, well, a Resonator in general, because he's not a Resonator. But so if he's the only card on your field, he's 14/14. If he's along with other stuff, he's 10/10, which is still amazing for stats. And he kills any J ruler and produces fire. So Blazer's been really, he's not really complicated, I think, to play. There's just so many different ways to play it that I think that's where people get stuck. But like I said, I kind of went with the close to Resard build. So I still have a Grusbalesta as a ceiling stone because the -2 is really relevant, especially with Maribel kind of being bigger. This doesn't count as damage, so if you do this during the draw and then after the draw, you've done 400 to the J ruler, which is really great. Followed up by a flame, even if they have a Maribel, that's a total of 1000 damage. I have a Feethsing stone because I'm playing black-green. Feethsing in this deck is extremely strong because if you hit this first turn, the only thing it kind of hinders you for is not being able to spiral turn 2. But being able to drop Guinevere while still having Feethsing for late game is just really powerful. It's one of those stones that a lot of people wish they could kind of use, but it doesn't go in a lot of their decks. So to be able to fit it in here and comfortably use it really early on just feels great. 4 Magic Stone of Black Silence for black-green. I have, it's not really much for counters or anything because I am only running 1 Xeex and Keen Sense in this, but it's more for a lot of things I had in Resard like Oz and Familiar just for consistency. And then 4 Magic Stone of Scorched Bales. This is, I was going to only run 3, but then I figured Blazer himself, the Resonator, costs 3 red and then 2 colorless. And I didn't want to risk that if my Blazer were to die, even though, you know, 3 would be enough to still summon Blazer the Resonator, I didn't want to be able to only draw Blazer and then maybe not a Guinevere or something. So even though Blazer does produce red, it's kind of silly not to use any red in the deck because in a situation where he does die, it's going to be extremely dangerous to just have all these cards that you can't play anymore. I'd much rather play 4 of these and then have the other 6 stones be color fixed by the red rather than try to go too crazy with the build and try to fit like all these crazy ratios and stuff in just to be able to utilize red to like a little more. So I think it's totally safe to just run Scorched Bales. It does leave me open for split with this stone lineup, but the deck is really aggressive and has a really aggressive side as well. So if I'm going against a deck that I know uses split, I can play off maybe like 4 to 5 stones and just be kind of in the safe while really tearing them down too. So for the Resonators, I have 3 Guineveres. 4 of this card I think is always too much. Even though she's incredible and one of the best cards in Fire in general right now, I never like 4 of this card. I think with how easy mulligans are enforceable, there's no real reason to ever run 4 of this kind of card that just is really mainly for early game. It's not too horrible mid game or end game, but I'd much rather just open this and not really see any other copy too often rather than just draw it when I really want something else. 3 Rukh Egg. I also don't like 4 of this card if I'm not playing any Cthulhu's. I think that if you play 4 Guinevere and 4 Rukh Egg, a lot of the times you just clog up on all these little 1-drops that even though they're all like replacing themselves and giving you cards, you're not really setting up as fast as you should. And the longer it takes you to set up, the more chance your opponent has to have your combo breakers or just certain, like they get set up really easily and you're just doing all these like, you know, banish Rukh Egg with Guinevere, you search your card, you draw 2, everything's awesome, but nothing's actually happening. You're just kind of setting up all this setup, but you're kind of doing it a little too late. So I think 3 of each of those is totally fine. I'd rather use 4 of a card like Familiar, where it gives me something the second I use it. So on enter, Familiar lets you draw. For anyone that hasn't seen my kind of how to play videos on the activates and enters and stuff, if you do use Guinevere on Rukh Egg, please note that you search before you draw 2 and discard 1. And the whole idea is to search Blazer and then discard it, and then you keep the 2 cards you drew with Guinevere, of course. That combo will be kind of talked about later. So 4 Familiars because I think the consistency this provides is really great. Not to mention like the little spot removal isn't so bad either. With Arthur in the deck, it leaves everything -2/-2, so a 5/5 would now be 3/3, which could be destroyed by Familiar, which is always really great. It saves you from having to use a Thunder. I brought the 3 Oz over from Rezard's deck. I think that this card is really strong because Soulhunt is really powerful. There's a couple cards you would want to discard in this deck as well, especially something like Deathscythe, which isn't really good against every deck. If you're going against, like, let's say a Grim deck, you never really need to play more than 1 Deathscythe because you might want to just play 1 for the buff it provides, but maybe not even that. While its discard fodder is really important because discarding a Scythe with Guinevere, it's almost just like a free +2 because you can later get the Scythe back while setting up combos. And once again, I'll get into it as I keep going into the deck. 3 Carmilla. I kind of wanted to fit Laura's in this like I had in Rezard, but I kind of wanted a lot more removal than I had in Rezard because I don't have access to his amazing God ability in this deck. So I kind of figured I'd use the spot for like Thunders and stuff like that rather than more kind of deck thinning, as I felt I had Guinevere's in here, which Rezard didn't. 2 Arthurs. I had 3 in Rezard, but 2 I think is good in this because I don't have the milling mechanic. I don't want to kind of have them in my hand too often, but I have searchable Soulhunt with Oz, so I can discard this very easily. And the whole point of it is to discard Blazer. So the idea is you use Guinevere on Rukh Egg, you search Blazer, you discard Blazer, keep the 2 cards you drew. At any point now, if you use an Oz and you have Soulhunt, you grab Soulhunt, you can Soulhunt and, banish whatever, and they banish whatever, you discard Arthur, they discard a card. You then can use Arthur to banish Blazer, and then later on in the game, Blazer can come out for free. So Deathscythe is the same thing as Deathscythe banishes 3 cards to return to your hand. Arthur is specifically 3 Resonators, so please note that you do have to banish 3 Resonators for this. And it can't be like any card, whereas Scythe is any card. So the basic combo essentially is to use Guinevere early game to set up Blazer. You then use Arthur and Deathscythe to banish your graveyard to have access to your Blazers. And then he's your main beat stick while they can't use their J-Ruler to recover, because if they do try to use their J-Ruler, you can destroy it with Blazer, getting a free 10/10 on the field. So essentially, even if they try to kind of answer the Blazer with certain cards like J-Rulers that might be stronger at blocking or anything like that, you can easily just counter with Blazer. So the whole deck is pretty much Blazer Rush. I don't really have much of anything else going other than like the Familiars for consistency and Oz to search out Soul Hunts, which is great to discard Arthur, like I said, and just as spot removal too. At the right time, Soul Hunt can feel extremely powerful. So I really enjoyed being able to search it specifically with Oz, because it almost kind of feeds itself too, because if you have, like before in Jayan decks, people would drop Oz, search Inquisition, play Inquisition by resting Oz. Of course, that combo here would make you kind of banish the Oz, which kind of sucks to lose the 6/6. But if you're using it at the right time and they have something that's really important to get rid of, it's a lot better to give up that kind of 4-drop combo rather than have to deal with what they have, especially when next turn, if this is a 4-turn combo and you have 4 stones, next turn you're going to have 5, and by this you've set up Blazer, so going in with the Blazer is going to kill whatever they play on their turn again, and it's just an extremely powerful play. Moving on to the spells, I have 4 Deathscythes. Like I said, this is extremely crucial because it makes people totally scared to use their J Ruler. This card says your opponent's J Ruler loses Imperishable and Swiftness and can't gain them. It's extremely powerful because making sure that they can't gain Imperishable means that if they see this on the field, they're not going to J-activate in fear of Blazer killing them. If they're playing something like Bales, you can save this in your hand to make it seem like you just got unlucky and didn't draw into it. And then when they play their J Ruler, you can drop Deathscythe and they're forced to use the Bale. And then you can make them get rid of it and maybe just go with a different play or just retrieve it back, play it again, and then J-activate. So there's just so much this card does. Of course, like I mentioned, the last effect is to remove 3 cards in your graveyard and you add it back to your hand. So discarding this with Soulhunt or Guinevere is kind of like a free discard because you can always get it back. And it sets up certain cards like Blazer, so it just has a lot of utility in this deck. 3 Soulhunt. Once again, this is one of those cards a lot of people like to play 4 of, but because I have Oz, I'd rather just play 3. It's super accessible, and it just each player banishes a card and banishes a Resonator from the field and discards a card. So if used at the right moment, like sometimes you can bait out, like if you're playing against Water, a Valentina deck, they're starting to use cards like Alice Soldier and Purple Mist. If you can kind of go into your battle and make them use all their Cheshires and all they have left is an Alice Soldier, maybe like a Purple Mist, and then you play Soul Hunt, you just banish one of the cards you had that attack that might not even be that strong, like let's say an Oz or even like a Familiar. If you attack with Familiar and they block with the Cheshire Cat because they don't want you getting chump damage in there, and then you play Soul Hunt, it's like, sure, I'll give up my Familiar to kill your Purple Mist. It's just really, really strong. And then Thunder's really great in this deck too because in Resart, I didn't want the spot removal because I had his God ability, but in this deck, it's really nice to have it for stuff like Elvish Priest and stuff. Not to mention that this is also searchable by Oz, so being able to grab this and maybe Thunder for game is just a really consistent combo. Of course, you can't control that they're going to always be at 500 life, but it's kind of just one of those, like, you know, if it happens, it happens. It's a great card on its own anyway, so it doesn't matter. So I'm really fond of searching this with Oz. And then 4 Spirals. Spiral has always been a really strong card because it lets it makes your opponent discard 2 cards. That's just extremely powerful because it makes they lose all their consistency. I think turn 2 Spiral is a very strong play because your opponent essentially mulligans to set up their early hand, and then if let's say they have 5 cards, they mulligan 3. 2 of those cards are good, and they get 3 new cards. Assuming that they kind of fix their problem hand and they now have 5 good cards. If their first turn is like something, like you go first, let's say you play Guinevere and churn. They draw a tap, use the 1 drop they kept in their hand because it was one of, let's say, the first 2 good cards. Play 2 Regalias, they now have 3 cards in hand and churn. You draw and you use Spiral. And it's just like, it's insanely strong. They have 1 card left in their hand. They're barely going to have 2 on their draw. They have their 1 drop that's not really threatening, of course, because it's the only card on their field. And the Regalias, and they can't use their J Ruler because if they attempt to J activate early, you're just going to kill it. So knowing that you can kind of stun them that early and not let them recover is just a ridiculously strong combo. Like I can't think of why people wouldn't want to play Spiral in Blazer. 2 Stoning to Death, it's just removal. Like I said, I didn't have stuff like this in Resonators because of his God ability, but I kind of need access to it for Resonators in Blazer just in case. Because the one weakness Blazer has is you can't J-activate whenever you want either, so if you're in a situation where you're kind of getting overrun by Resonators, it is kind of hard to deal with. So all these removals, like the Carmilla, Thunders, and this can really help. 1 Xeex and 1 Keen Sense. This is just because I'm playing the green, so I figured just having 1 of each would be great. I keep saying this in all the videos, I do have 1 of each of these in, but I really don't think you need any more than this. Unless you're playing like an actual like all green deck, I can see you maybe using 2 and 2, but maybe even 3 Xeex because it's just amazing. But if you're not running all the green, I feel like it's not worth running really more than 1 of each. Like there's just so much more the other colors can do in a deck with green splash than if it's just pure. And then 1 Book of Ebon. Somebody asked me why I wasn't playing this in Resart, but it's because I had Persephone. It was essentially pay 4 to bring out, pay 2 for Persephone to set it, and then you flip it and bring out something really powerful. so it's almost cheaper than Book of Ebon because this costs 3 and Persephone is only 2 to set. But in this deck, because I have Guinevere's discarding Blazer, essentially if I do that on turn 2 with playing Rukh Egg after Guinevere's been on the field, turn 3 I can Book of Ebon it before I even try to banish it with like a Scythe or an Arthur, so it's an easy way to get an early Blazer out. So I just thought just one would be cool because I didn't want to try to go for like that kind of wombo combo. I just figured like if it happens, it happens. I can pull out some strong cards from my opponent's graveyard too, but I'm not gonna like play multiples of this card and just hope for the best and see, you know, try to make it more combo oriented. I was totally fine with just throwing in one and, you know, kind of just testing it out. Lastly, for the side deck, I have 3 land slots. This is mainly just to go against something like Vlad where I need a lot more aggression against. You can't really take your time setting up combos against Vlad because it's just going to end up ramping and burning you down. So I wanted access to land slots, which I can of course search with just Rukh Egg and Guinevere. Rukh Egg also really works really well with Soulhunt too, by the way. So you can always just banish it for Soulhunt and then search a Fire Resonator to replace it, so it's totally fine. Lancelot's been great because, of course, he's really strong and all your stones are fire, so you can pump him up really easily. One Susano, this is really great too at just one because if your opponent's playing something like Wyvers, you can search this off of Rukh Egg as well and play a turn 3. It's totally unexpected and they use their early turn setting this up and then you counter really easily with Susano. 2 Credo, this is just for Vlad again. I'm not a fan of Vlad. I side really heavily against it because it's one of the decks that I just feel like I hate any deck that's kind of like the whole like face hunter kind of aspect and like Hearthstone. I don't like decks that are kind of like me against your field while your field is against just my life. It's really frustrating and I feel like it takes the interaction out of the game and it kind of defeats the purpose of like why you use certain cards. It's essentially just I'm going to use a bunch of rapid, a bunch of cards that can block, and then just burn you down. It doesn't really feel like anything's happening, and I don't mean to insult any Vlad players out there or, you know, kind of make you feel bad for playing the deck or anything. If you like the deck, it's totally fine. I'm a really strong believer in, like, there are certain decks that people like Arla's getting a lot of attention now all out of nowhere, and I've always liked Arla even when everyone said it was like one of the worst rulers, and I just wanted to play it because I liked it. And if somebody really likes Vlad because they might like the story behind it or, you know, that they like learned about it in history class and they thought it was funny to, you know, now have a card for it, or just any reason you might just personally like that kind of playstyle, I think it's fine. I only think it's a problem when everyone kind of starts jumping on the boat of, oh, if I don't play this, I'm going to lose, because it's not true. Vlad is a very hard matchup for certain decks, but it's definitely not unbeatable. So please don't be forced to play decks that people say are good. You can, Enforceable, my favorite thing has been that you can just make a lot of decks good if you really dedicate the time to it. And I don't mean to sound like a really cheesy like Yugi or anything, but it really is true. There's just so much you can do in this game and so many unexplored areas. And I mean, even my Arla deck, when I took it to locals, I kind of had, you know, certain looks from people and they were kind of looking at me like it's not going to do well. And I top 4 with it and we didn't even play it out. We just split for top 4. So sometimes people can really underestimate a deck and it's not really the right thing to do because there isn't even a meta right now. So just play what you want to play, have some fun. I don't know why I randomly just like kind of went off of topic there, but I just don't want people to think that I'm specifically like bagging on Vlad because I'm not. I just think if you don't particularly like the playstyle, just don't play it and play something you like. 2 Field Movement. This is strictly for maybe something like Resard. Like I said, sometimes it's not so great to shuffle their deck back with Xeex. If you watch the video, I explained that they can use Scythe and Arthur to specifically control what ends up getting shuffled back. So removing it, I think, is the best option. This card banishes your opponent's graveyard, and being able to do that, or you can do yours too, and which will set up Blazer. But if you banish your graveyard and they take 100 damage for every Resonator that was removed, if yours says card, you added, so it's actually for every Resonator. You can essentially just banish your graveyard so their Arthurs can't come back and all that stuff. So I just have that just in case. 3 Flame of the Outer World, people might wonder why I'm not maining this, but this card was always in my deck when I didn't have really answers for J-Rulers because it's so good against them, but because Blazer is my actual ruler and I don't really have to worry about their J-Ruler too much, I figured the Stonings and Carmillas would be enough for Resonators, Thunders would take care of anything small, and Flame would kind of just be overkill. So I have them in there just in case because I might end up needing them, especially if certain matchups, like Cinderella is kind of flame worthy, she's just an 8/8 on summon, so stuff like that can be removed, but generally I didn't really feel the need to main it. I figured just 2 in the side would be fine. And then 2 Flame King Shouts, anything that is like my Arla deck that drops a bunch of cats and Alice Scouts and stuff. could get a little overwhelming, excuse me, and so I just wanted to be able to clear out all the little stuff on the field. I mean, this doesn't even hit your field, so it's great. And then if you do side into Landslot, you can drop Landslot with this as well. There isn't really much targets in the deck other than that, but I just like it for the swoop aspect. I think the last effect is just a plus, but a 3 cost to do 4/4 and everything I think is fine on its own. And then same with Dark Pulse. If I'm going in something like Knights that actually have a lot more defense, like Gwaine has 700 defense, so something like Flame King Shot wouldn't do anything. If I have that kind of matchup, or maybe like a Shangri-La, the Paradise, the fuel spell for water, if somebody's using that to pump up all their Cheshires and stuff, and they're a lot out of the 400 range, I'd much rather side into Dark Pulse instead. So it's just a lot of removal on the side for stuff that I might go against, since I can't rely on Blazer for anything other than J-Rulers, and then the main deck is kind of focused on combos and putting a lot of pressure on your opponent. So thanks for watching, guys. That was my Blazer deck profile. If you guys do have any questions or suggestions, please feel free to leave a comment in the comment section below. If you want a copy of the deck list, it is going to be in the description, so hit read more to be able to see that. And if you guys haven't subscribed yet, make sure you do, because I have Alice the Saint of Healing's deck profile coming tomorrow with Chrisia on Friday, and a couple announcements on Friday actually as well. And I will definitely catch you guys next time.